right. It is, what day is it? It's Friday the 13th.
Ooh. I want to go back and see how many times we've done Friday the 13th before.
That would be fun to do. This is episode number 119 of Office Flash Friday.
I'm guessing we've done at least one or two.
Probably. Statistically, it would almost be likely that we've done that. Since neither of us is a Knights Templar, I believe we are safe.
Oh, okay. I don't know that reference.
Look it up.
Right.
That's why Friday the 13th is supposedly bad. At least that's one of the historical rumors behind it. I haven't checked Snopes to see if it's legit or not.
I'll check
anyway, I got a couple of things. Kind of a slow news week heading into the holidays, and that's fine. And then there's a few things we wanted to show. There's some stuff I'll be putting up in the show notes that some work we released out to GitHub. Yep. Previously, we've shown. Well, that's what I got. I'll go over my stuff. Todd, what do you got going on today?
I've got a similar set of stuff. A little slower, but that's all right. I've got the stuff that I do have is a couple new features in the Power Platform and some guidance also in GitHub and a little just fun demo.
We can explore the space today. We can really explore the space.
Let it breathe, yes.
Let it breathe. First one I got is, you and I both spotted this one almost immediately, is that Microsoft Teams is available on Linux.
Yes, that's exciting.
It's a big deal.
I guess this is I saw someone, I didn't realize it, but someone mentioned this is the first Office app on Linux. I guess that's right?
Might be.
I guess Word's not on Linux, right?
I mean, you could argue that the browser-based experiences, I've been over there forever, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
But, and those, like, you live in it from a browser experience standpoint, so that shouldn't be, dismissed, so to speak. But as far as actual real running application, I did see that that there was a couple. I was curious to see what the community comment was. People were like, hey, great, but your package distribution methods are out of date for getting it down. So that was great feedback for people. They're like, but it wasn't like this sucks, it doesn't work, or whatever it was. So it was like, and it's in early stages. So hopefully we can course correct and get it right. I don't know. They were just talking about different package deployment scripts and everything else. I was kind of reading through the commentary from the community, but everybody's like, hey, it works great. Well, that's great. If our critique is deployment, that's easier to fix than this client's not any good.
Yeah, love it.
I mean, in the early days, I remember, and those who've been around the community for a while can probably attest to this, is that our early releases of Skype for Business on Mac had issues. Right, quality issues on voice. It wasn't chat or that kind of stuff, but it was around other collaboration experiences. So I didn't see that immediate commentary, which was encouraging to me about the engineering quality of the release. So I like that.
Do you know if it's is it full featured or is it missing anything?
So I noticed on here, all it said was that so right now it's in Deb and RPM, and it said that it will support all of Teams' core capabilities. And so those are defined. I mean, that's, chat, meetings, and the rest of that kind of stuff. So I think it'll be interesting to see how far that goes. And I, long ago and far away, I worked for Novell when we acquired Zusa Linux. So I have a background in that. So I'm probably going to go stand up desktop and just see what it's like and then kick the tires on it just because I can.
Cool. So, well,
I haven't Linuxed in a while, but it's at least at a desktop level, obviously for application deployment stuff. But I'll stand up a little desktop and see what it is and see if there's anything to report. Anyway, so that's a kind of a neat announcement on top of it.
Well,
for those who have it,
there's for getting that shipped. That's great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of places that you might use this, and so I'm very pleased with this. I'm not very surprised that we were able to do this easily, simply because of the other places we run and how the code base is architected. Sure. But it was pleasant to see the wrapper up and deployment and the commitment to it. And it's in preview right now, so click on the link, go get it, have a little Linux fun for your day.
Wonderful.
Enterprise mobility and security. There was one really interesting release around this, and I wanted to explore that content a little bit with the group. And that is that we released a proof of concept guidance, sample statements of work, recommendation for an actual 5-day sprint POC around Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So the wrappered up modern management and deployment framework from Microsoft around devices and everything else. So you and I were looking through. They released. So the package has some good stuff.
This is pretty rich content. Yeah.
It is. It's a nice overlay as to how you should approach that initial project phase, the considerations you should have. It's nothing revolutionary, but it's nice. It's polished up. And what I also like is that if you are an enterprise customer, They do put in sample statements of work for a partner to achieve these outcomes. You and I did not look at those, but I did. Todd and I were skimming this content together before the show, but I skimmed through those, and so I like that, because then if you were going to either use, say you had an entitlement to some Microsoft co-funding, or you didn't, but you wanted to have a known output for this scope of work, you have a sample statement of work from which to start if you don't want to do it yourself. If you're going to do it yourself, you have some interesting content on top of it. One of the things you and I found kind of interesting within the V1 sprint was they showed there's not much marketing content in the slide, which I was in the content, which I was pleased about. But the opening one has a little bit. But you and I were talking about the hockey stick of user adoption. So if we cut over the slide for like 1 second for full screen, notice like in 2018, like is when it really, you could argue maybe end of 2017, boom, that's when it went up. So if you cut back, so that's when Intune really started to take off. That is basically around, we were doing the show then, and that is basically around the time where Todd and I are like, hey, this thing's starting to get pretty good.
I attribute, yeah. I mean, I think that's around correlation equals causation, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we were observing its success at that point in time, right? That we're like, hey,
I was trying to take
gotten real.
About you, but
yeah, I don't think we could claim credit for it. I think we could claim observational correlation, right? That's about it. Anyway, I thought it was interesting, and I do think it's worth a review of the content and the framework. It breaks down the steps, the consideration. It does have a sort of day timeline approach to how you should break the workshop down. And sort of what milestones you're going to be accomplishing in a given area. So what are you going to do on day 1, day 2, day 3, and then day 4 or 5 for validation and everything else. So it's really designed to be sort of a 1-week sprint proof of concept. I would actually even maybe label this more carefully aligned to a rapid prototype. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I like it. I think it's just like, here's the blocks of consideration you should have. Here's the way to eat the elephant and take it.
Everybody that is going down this path has to do this anyway, right? So I mean, this is just a nice accelerator.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't miss anything.
Yep.
Learn from all the best practices that we've picked up over the last couple of years and go. So
I liked it. And so you can just go out and get it. It is technically driven around the partner community, but there's nothing in there that doesn't let you go get it. So there you go.
Wonderful.
I went and scrubbed the rest of the ecosystem, and there wasn't anything like truly revolutionary for enterprise this week. Like I said, I think after Ignite and everything, it's okay.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
I have. There was a few things we got finished up and published out. Corey Buzzle has been working on a long time ago. I showed off how you could use the Teams APIs, probably back around in the episode 90s range, where we were showing off how you could use the Graph API to document teams.
Yes.
And then they released the clone team and showed how you could use the Graph API to instantiate teams. And if you wanted to, you could use a flow, give that permissions, and kind of abstract the group creation, the team's creation process. So you could turn off that and put your own self-service process in play. Well, now with the Power App pinning capabilities, you can take that Power App that we recommended you build out, and you could pin it like your own Teams governance inside a team. So you have your own Teams provisioning. People can have a way to find that Teams management and provisioning interface and the documentation interface directly within Teams. Mm-hmm. So Corey has updated that, and I'll put it in the show notes to get it out there, but it's up on the GitHub repo, and it's getting a lot of traction and attention. And we originally co-built that with a manufacturing customer in the Twin Cities who basically said, your way of provisioning a team and the questions you ask is completely insufficient to us. And so we sat down with them. This is back when I was an architect. We started building it, and then Corey actually finished it, documented it, solved for the remaining issues. Like, this thing is now a pretty damn complete governance solution around Teams provisioning and management if you won't meet the criteria of Microsoft's out of the box.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's
so awesome. That one got released. We also got the
that's out on GitHub.
It's out on GitHub, also out on the GitHub repo, and I'll put both links. I'll put links to Corey's in it and the other one. The newsworthy thing we showed how to use the Graph APIs to publish SharePoint news pages. Mm-hmm. That one is in there, and we learned an awful lot about how to assemble and do notification posts using trusted image tags. So if you want to have a rich post that has like the little image thumbnail, how do you actually do that both via email, Teams, and Yammer? Because just doing the message post notification often isn't sufficiently structured enough. You'll get a text message, but you get the little unknown icon or no graphical icon. So we figured out how how to structure it, what the image scale requirements are, and everything around all those graphical card-based notifications. And so that's going to be going into the updated GitHub repo for Newsworthy, so aka.ms/Newsworthy. So we've been doing a lot of work on sort of polishing up those two things. Corey on the one side, me on the news post side, and the visualization. So we got some cool updates for you if you're heading into the holidays and you're thinking, what kind of project-ish stuff should I be exploring? There's nice for automation, for documentation, graph usage, accelerating SharePoint news page consumption, all sorts of goodies we're publishing out there for you to use. So that's all I have for the week.
Very cool. All right. Well, so I have really only one announcement news type thing, and then I have some more guidance things, kind of all of what you did, and then I have a short, fun Power BI demo. So the announcement is the addition of the file image type to the Common Data Service, which of course affects Power Apps, Power Automate, all of those things. And this is a different approach to what we've done in the past, which were attachments. So we're kind of saying, hey, we have this first party data type called file, and that's going to be in the Common Data Service, which is also going to be exposed over it through the APIs. So we recommend kind of using those things, especially for things that are substantive. So things that are greater than 5 megs, especially, go ahead and just do your best to scoot over to those as soon as possible, just from an efficiency perspective, because as the other blog post from the API perspective points out, these are stored over in blob storage.
Yeah, so we can cut over to full screen on this probably, so we can.
Yeah. So instead of these things being shoved into the relational database behind the scenes, these things are actually put out into blob storage, which is more efficient, right? As we've, just kind of a duh thing, but this is great. So out of the gate, these are supported in Canvas apps, and the support will come soon to the model-driven apps and Power Automate and those kinds of things. So definitely check this out if you guys are collecting files from users in your Power Apps. So this is good. Images, files, all of those things. So happy to see this added. All right, so moving over to, I have a couple Power BI kind of guidance things. So no real announcement or news. And this one is just a further message to me that the Power BI team and the data teams are really putting their investment in Power BI Premium. And that's not to say that analysis services or Azure Analysis Services is being de-emphasized, but rather that Power BI Premium is really kind of the first class way to go, especially if you're using Power BI. So this blog post does a really good job of kind of walking you through, and for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, in Power BI, when you're reporting on anything, that data lives in a model, okay? Which means it's a pointer back to where the data sources come from, and it's all the relationships, all the business logic that the user needs to do the reporting. That model can live in Power BI Premium. It could also live in Azure Analysis Services. And if you go back in time, a year, 2 years ago, Azure Analysis Services was really the powerhouse here as far as how much data you can put in, rich feature sets around incremental refresh and things like translations and role-based security. Largely, a lot of these things that were in the distinct realm of Azure Analysis Services have largely moved over into Power BI Premium, and even then some. So I think what you're starting to see is if you guys, especially have already invested in Power BI Premium or you're thinking about it on the verge, you really want to think about doing your model development inside of and deployment inside of Power BI Premium.
So the vast majority of my large enterprises are already there.
Yep.
So you're saying that we should probably start leaning that way for future development if that's what we own.
And I think largely my guess, Doug, is at least and the customers I've talked to, the people that are already investing in Power BI Premium are already doing this. I think the customers that need to take a look at this are the ones that are waiting to invest in Power BI Premium until they hit some user threshold. And if they're deploying models over to Azure Analysis Services. I had a customer in just recently that was in that boat where they maybe had a couple hundred users. They were thinking of the switch over to Power BI Premium strictly as a cost cutover. Like, well, when we hit 500 users, we're going to do the flip. No longer.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yep. So that's really to me no longer the threshold. It's really capability and deployment mechanisms that are, I think, really going to push that. So I think there's very few reasons, unless you're a super small business and you're always only going to be, 10 users, 20 users. Starting to look at Power BI Premium Azure deployment model for deploying these enterprise BI models is something that you want to look out more kind of just out of the gate. Is what, and I have Alex Powers here in the studio, and so I see him nodding his head in agreement. So that's really good. So this gives you a lot of the overview of why and those capabilities. And it's not that Azure Analysis Services or Analysis Services on-prem isn't a valid choice in certain scenarios, especially if you haven't made an investment in Power BI yet. You can put other BI tools on top of Analysis Services. So there's still a lot of reasons that you would think about deploying Analysis Services or Azure Analysis Services. But if you're doing Power BI at all, you really should be strongly looking at Premium at this point. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man.
That was just a good, concise overview of those things. All right. So before I get to my demo, I'm going to point over to Matthew Roche's blog here, who kind of broke the Power BI adoption framework out this week. I like his cheeky title here, is kind of funny. It's Power BI AF. It's the Power BI adoption framework, right? So nice. And this is starting out with a couple things over on GitHub in the way of PowerPoint decks, as well as some YouTube. And this is really, to me, the culmination of all of the features and guidance and experience that customers and Microsoft has had on Power BI over the last couple of years. So I really think that this is kind of like to your point around the adoption curve of Intune on your chart a few minutes ago. Power BI is really, it's a mature tool at this point, right? It's been out for a few years. It's a mature tool. It's an enterprise tool. We give you the controls, the knobs, and the guidance to roll this out to massive enterprise scales, to thousands of users in dozens of environments. The tool's there. So, but this is a really good kind of hang your hat on guidance to kind of go through and look at these things. And it goes through in terms of adoption, governance, service management, security, rollout, and support. So how to run a COE, how to go find your champions inside your organization to help you kind of gain adoption, how to pick your first project and roll it out. It's a really good set of guidance. And as you're getting go, I've been having this conversation a lot with customers over the past year or so, and it's finally kind of gelling in something.
It is probably the number one conversation that we're having as we transform with customers, I think, to go from working on them with projects to help them establish programs and centers of excellence to be able to adopt and consume at scale.
Yep. No, this absolutely.
Emily, can you cut back to my screen for like 1 second, just full screen on the. So this is the Azure Cloud Adoption Framework, which talks about strategy, planning, readiness, and the ability to adopt, innovate, and go do things.
Yep.
And then down below, it talks about governance and management. All right, so you can cut back. That framework is universal. You got to have some strategy. You need a plan. You need your people and your environment ready to do it. And then you can go adopt, migrate, and innovate. But down below is this governance, management, and control layer. And people tend to go do their first couple of projects. And what you should be doing is learning how that sockets back into governance and control while you're doing that project, because otherwise you end up with the Frankenstein's monster on the right-hand side of the equation, where you're not developing healthy practices around socketing it into change management, governance, your service catalog. So when we talk about these sprints around the considerations for the proof of concept rapid prototype framework, a lot of those buckets enlighten these buckets. The framework that you just said, right? The adoption framework. So what we're basically saying is this cloud adoption framework is generic. Then we release specific frameworks for things like Power BI or whatever it is. We do these because you don't have to slow down when you're doing your first initial rapid prototype-y kind of stuff over there, but you have to be thinking about how it's going to socket into the rest of your enterprise.
That's right.
That's good enterprise architecture.
And that's what it is. You just said the word, right? Or the phrase. So, and let's just be honest. I mean, none of this stuff is super sexy or like the flashy stuff, but it's what enables you to do all that stuff at scale.
You slow down, you do your first ones and you learn, and then you slow down just a little while you identify the areas that you must have down, things like identity services, role-based provisioning and deprovisioning, change management, service catalog, or you're not going to survive your next audit. Next year, the equivalent of GDPR hits the United States.
Yep.
Right? I mean, and if you didn't do it last time around, or you think you dodged it, or whatever else it is, you're not going to dodge California data privacy.
And when I talked to, I mean, I had a customer in this week who has a really, really cool innovation group who gets it, right? And this is not the group that's operationalizing, but this is the group that wants to move fast. And they know, they realize, and they agree that they're not going to be able to continue to move fast at scale over the next couple of years unless they get these foundations in place. And partner with these organizations inside of their company that enables them to do this stuff with confidence and at scale over the next couple of years. So
now, I would say that particularly in the enterprise space, we can help you.
Oh yeah.
Like we have sprints around how to get all this stuff into Sharewell or ServiceNow, so that if your governance tool is over here and we have it, we can get it from here to there. Like we can help you. So reach out and to your local 3-year account teams if you want to get in front of us and talk about those things. We spend help time. That's where that initial stuff Corey published around Teams governance came from, a specific customer working through a problem. We took that, turned it into a neutral architecture, and published it. Same for the cloud adoption framework for Azure. Same for the Power BI adoption framework. All right, end of rant. Mr. Kidd, you have a demo.
We talked about, stodgy, boring stuff. Now I'm calling it boring, which is not fair, right? But I'm going to do a fun demo. This is really just fun. And I feel like this is showing off some of the power that's been added into Power BI that maybe not everyone has seen, but I think is really, really useful. So this is Rotten Tomatoes.
Let's cut full screen on this. We're doing demo. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm about to take some time off over the holidays to, and I love watching movies with my kids. I love watching movies by myself. I'm a big film guy. So I love looking at things on Rotten Tomatoes. So what I did is I built this report in Power BI that I scraped out of the page that I was just showing. And I did some Power BI things like, date filters, like show me things that came out after, October 11th. And then I can see everything that is in the 90 and 80 buckets. So I did some binning. And then here's all of the movies that meet those requirements and with their poster. So there's Ford versus Ferrari, which I haven't seen yet. I hear is very good. And then, I have a link back over to the page. So pretty cool. So how did I build this? I'm just going to walk back through and build this really quick. So, and Doug, whoops, it's not from Excel. Feel free to jump in with commentary as I do this. But I went up to, and notice I have the new ribbon experience turned on inside of Power BI Desktop.
I love the new ribbon experience.
It looks very nice. So all I'm doing is I'm pasting in the URL of that page. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, I want to pull in data from this page by example.
If that page needed auth, you could have provided it.
I could have, yes, that's exactly right. So if I needed to pull from some internal intranet or something like that, I could have done that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in add tables using examples because that's not, the data on that page isn't really conducive to what I want to do. So first thing I'm going to point out is that data on this page must be pulled in dynamically, because you'll notice that it's either that or whatever browser that Power BI team's embedding isn't pulling it in. However, I did find that it is working. So I'm just going to start typing in what I want. So I know the first thing is Frozen 2, right, in that list. And I know that the second thing is Knives Out, which I also haven't seen and I heard is amazing.
Yeah, we're going to see that this weekend, so I'm excited.
I'm going to go try and see it with my wife as well. So now, after giving it 2 examples, it pulled in the rest. So I see Ford versus Ferrari and Queen and Slim, Ford versus Ferrari, Queen and Slim. So I've got the titles. So what do I want next? I want to get the rating. I want to get when it came out in the theater, and I even want to get the URL of the poster and the image. So I'm just going to say copy image link to have it handy. And I'm going to start going over here and say, I know that Frozen 2 had a 77% rating. So I'm going to type 77%, hit enter, and notice that right away it pulled out. So let's see, it got 77, 97, 92, 77, 97, 92. Perfect. Let's get the date. So in theaters, and I think Frozen was November 21st. Yep. And then November 27th, 15th, 27th, just doing a little spot checking. Let's start getting the URLs out. So I've got that poster image in my clipboard. So I'm just going to paste that in, hit enter. I'm going to go get the second one, copy image link, paste, enter. And after giving it 2 examples, it is able to pull those out.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm going to name this title. I'm going to name this score. I'm going to name this release text. Then I'm going to call this poster URL. Okay. So I'm going to pull that stuff in. So a couple things.
I have a feeling you're going to do some more manipulation of this data.
I am. So hopefully this is fun. So I'm going to transform that in. And a couple things to note that it only pulls in like 1 page worth of data. So there's some more stuff I would have to do to kind of get more information. So by default, it's bringing in 32 of these. So I'm going to start by, I'd already detected some data types. I want to get the actual date, right? So I can do some sorting and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column by example. So now I'm in Power Query. This is just Power Query stuff. And I'm going to type in November, Nov 21st, and notice that it extracted out those dates. So I'll call this, that's fine. We'll just put that there. And then now I found that this actually worked. I'm just going to change the data type to date. And that actually, hold on, did I do that correctly? Just date, not date time. There we go. So I'll call this release date. I'd actually have to do some testing to see how this would work once we start hitting dates in January, if it's smart enough to say, do these into the future. All right, so we've got release date. I've got release text, which I don't need anymore. And I think that I'm good. So I'm going to change the name of this to films and say close and apply. And I'm going to do a couple other quick things here just to make the data a little more useful as the data loads in. So now every day I can come in here, refresh, it's going to go pull the fresh data off the HTML page and just pull that in. So a couple things I want to do. I'm going to change score so that it's a percentage. I don't need any decimal points. I also don't need this to summarize, right? Because it is a percent. And I want to tell poster URL that it is a, where am I? It's under, is that under here? Shut it out. Oh, here we go. It's just my my resolution was too small. So this is an image URL. All right. So right away, and then one more thing I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to bin my score. Right. I am going to say new group, meaning I'm going to put them in groups of 10. So my number of bins is 10, and actually size of bins. I want to do that, 0.1. All right. So now I can do something like this and then add one more measure that is a film count. All right. So I'm going to throw this over here. Cool. I think that I did this right. If I didn't, someone's yelling at me right now remotely. But I'm going to go here. That's went out and got those images. I can put the title. I can put the score. And now I have a cool dashboard that I pulled in live from a web page.
So if you click on one of those score bins to say, hey, I'm only interested in people in the upper bucket, there's your movie choices.
Yeah.
And then you could add your slider for date and the other controls you had on your example finished report.
Absolutely. That's it. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So hang on. I just wanted I timed you when you started. You started at like, I think it was 51. So you dynamically ingested data, built a visual report based on intelligent filters with images and the rest of the stuff in 8 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And I just decided to do this like a couple minutes before we went on the air. So I thought this was pretty fun.
This is why when kids come in for community days, we have them do stuff like this. We build apps, we train AI models to spot and look up things. We have them do Power BI dashboards. This is why we want you to come to App in a Day or Dashboard a Day.
Yeah.
Because
so I think, there's so much data locked up in HTML. Even potentially internally. So I'm glad you called that out.
Well, that's why half the time I would say we've gotten pretty good at presenting it internally. Like I was thinking to myself, some of the reports I have now are just crazy.
And if you are curious, just if you are curious how this worked, it's just scraping the HTML. So you can see that here's how it found the score. Here's how it found the release text. It's looking at these CSS tags and just walking those through.
Yeah, so it actually educates you, and you could then, if you wanted to build out patterns or understand things or do more adaptive advanced logic, you can go and bust out that and get your own code on. I mean,
That's right.
yeah.
Get your code on.
All right. It is 11 o'clock on the dot.
Wow. Yes, it is. All right. Well, I hope that everyone has a great weekend. Stay safe and joins us next week.
I will actually not be here next week. So so I hope you are. If not, we'll have to have a double substitute show. I am picking up my son. I don't think I'm going to be here. My son, I got to check the flight times. He comes home after 4 months from his semester abroad in Japan.
Wonderful.
So if if he's landing while this show is on, if he's not, then I'll be here. But if he is, sorry.
Yeah.
I love you all, not that much.
Yeah. All right.
So,
well,
all right, everybody, have a great week. We'll see you next week. We'll put the newsworthy links and stuff we talked about into the show notes, and you all have a fabulous weekend.
Yeah.